Welcome to the Beginning Ham Radio session for the week of February 11th. And this is sponsored by the Portland Amateur Radio Club. And our agenda for tonight, well, if anybody's new tonight, and I don't see anybody, but if there is anybody new, if you'd like, let us know who you are and just introduce yourself. We'll go through a couple announcements. And if any of you guys have any news or announcements, we'll have a minute for that. And then we'll do our weekly topic for about 30 minutes and then general questions and answers afterwards. So if this is your first time at a Beginning Ham Radio meeting, just introduce yourself with your name, your call sign. How did you hear about this meeting and what brought you or what interests you in ham radio?
I can start if you want.
Oh, hey, Scott. Long time no see.
Oh, yep. Yeah, we were just on a Zoom this morning. And in fact, that's where I belong to the PDX QRP group. And we had a meeting this morning. And that's how I heard about this meeting. And that's why I decided to join. I'm relatively new to ham. I think I got my license back in the spring. I do have an advanced license. I have an extra license, but I don't really have much experience. I don't get on the air much. My interest is in mostly lately has been in actually building radios rather than using them. So, but I'd like to start using them as well. But you know, just beginning. So.
Well, that's great. Yeah, Scott showed us on the QRP group, which meets about once a week on Zoom, a printed circuit board that he designed for a radio that he's building. So pretty advanced. And thank you for sharing that, Scott.
Sure.
Cool. Anybody else first time at the Beginning Ham Radio meeting?
Sure, I'll introduce myself. My name's Andrew Carson, KJ7UHO. I'm brand new to ham. My dad was a ham radio guy all growing up, and I thought it'd be another fun thing to get into. I do a lot of electronic stuff. I'm a software developer, so playing around with microcontrollers and Raspberry Pis and stuff like that. And it's been really fun to get into. I just passed my exam on Monday and I got my first radio this week. So I'm rocking the Baofeng UV5R and it's been fun so far.
Awesome. And congratulations on your license.
Thank you.
Did you are you going to program the radio with a computer?
I got a cord for it, but I haven't started that yet.
Okay.
We'll see, but probably. My guess is that'll be, you know, in the next couple of weeks, I'll start playing around with that.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. Those radios are great. They're a little bit difficult to program just on the keypad, but pretty easy actually using Chirp, which is some free software and a good cable. All right, thank you, Andrew. Anybody else? This is your first time to the Beginning Ham Radio meeting? Cool. All right, so some announcements. We just had our Portland Amateur Radio Club this last Monday, but we have it every second Monday of the month starting at 7 o'clock, and it is a Zoom meeting. And if you joined this this meeting or any other park meeting, I have your email address and I'll send you out invites in the mail for these meetings and also the monthly Portland Amateur Radio Club meeting. You can go take a look at our website, w7lt.org, and there'll be information on our meetings and our upcoming activities. The big event that we do every year as a club is going to be Field Day, and that is the last full weekend in June. And it's a lot of fun. It's a full 24 hours where ham radio people take their radios out into the field and we set them up, and just it's kind of like a casual contest. And then I'm putting up these videos and also the Portland Amateur Radio Club monthly meeting videos on the YouTube channel or YouTube website, and you can access that by through our website, or you can just go to YouTube and type in Portland Amateur Radio Club, and we're the first channel that comes up. And so far I've put up a lot of the monthly meetings that we've had, and I'm kind of just working backwards, putting up the previous ones that we do have recorded. I just haven't put them up yet. All right. Anybody have any other news or announcements that they would like to make?
Hey, Max, this is John McBride here.
Oh, hey, John.
I'd like to announce, just because I'm extra proud of it, that I got my call sign on Wednesday. I am KJ7UJD. And not only that, but I made radio contact with a fellow who was actually in the same classroom as me, taking the same test. And we figured that out because his call sign is one letter off from mine.
Very nice. Well, congratulations. That's great. And when you say classroom, is it still virtual?
No, actually. So I just practiced by taking the test with the Ham, I think it's Ham Radio Study app, which is incredibly useful. It's the actual questions the same questions and same answers that were on the test itself. The test itself, I think, was done by the, maybe it was the Tualatin Valley Amateur Radio Club, I think. And it was just in like a basement of a church building. So, but he sat right across me, and turned out we all got sequentially assigned those call signs. So we're hoping to, I'm D and he's F, and we're hoping to find E. We're hoping to find KJ7UJE. So if anybody makes contact, let me know.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, congratulations on your license and finding a good ham radio buddy.
Hey, this is KJ7UJE. I made contact with Alex yesterday also for my first time.
No kidding. I was talking to Alex downtown. We should.
Yeah,
wow, that's super. That's super neat. I don't want to take up all the time here, but I'm John. It's nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. It was very exciting that we all made our first contacts together and being in the same class.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'll put in. I'll talk to you on chat here and see if we can meet up on a frequency later on.
Yeah, sounds great.
Great.
That's awesome. There you go. You found the KJ7UJE. Cool. Anybody else? News or announcements? All right. So this week's topic is Hempfest, Expos, and Swap Meets. A lot of the Swap Meets have been canceled for this year, but some of them are going virtual, which is nice. And others, for example, one of the largest called Hamvention, and let me just switch the page here, is Hamvention is one of the largest ham conventions in the world. It draws a huge crowd out to a small part of Ohio, Xenia, Ohio, and they usually have it in a very large convention center. Conditions, I think, are a lot better now than they have been in the past. As far as the facilities go, I actually signed up for last year's Hamvention. It was going to be my first one, but unfortunately, because they canceled it, we had to get refunds on hotels, airplanes, and all the other stuff. So, but they are planning one for 2022, which will be great. And they have, in general, a Hamfest or a ham convention or an expo, goes by many names. The larger ones tend to have vendor halls where when you walk in, it's a lot of different vendors, from the very small mom and pop that are either selling smaller electronic kits or electronic parts, to the very large, like the big three, Kenwood, ICOM, Yaesu, and now of course we have Flex Radio and Elecraft. And they're there. A lot of these places you can buy radios and radio parts new. Sometimes the larger companies, they will just have a lot of information, and they'll usually show off their latest radio. Usually also there is a flea market, either a day or a couple of days during the convention. And those can be some of the most fun parts of the convention. And essentially, hams like you and me who have too much ham equipment in their closet and their junk drawer will pack up their car with all of their stuff that they'd like to sell, either old radios, new radios, anything ham related, and they may buy a table or two. It's pretty inexpensive. I've actually purchased a couple of tables in my history to either help out other people or get rid of some of my own stuff. And some people have 4 items that they want to sell, and some people have literally thousands of items that they'd like to, get a little bit of money for. It's a lot like a garage sale, if you think about it. And just like any flea market, you don't necessarily have to pay the price that is on the sticker, especially if it's getting towards closing time. A lot of people don't want to haul back all the stuff that they didn't sell. So that's when the wheeling and dealing kind of starts. So you may want to keep that in mind. They'll have speakers, so Hamvention and a lot of the other regional and local Hamfest will have speakers come and give talks. They will generally have prizes and raffles, so you can buy 20 tickets for $15. And some of the prizes are actually quite nice. They've, radios that cost anywhere from $200 to a few $1,000s will be raffled off during the Hamfest. And then, of course, the food is pretty can be pretty good depending on how hungry you are. But it's kind of a part information, shopping, and social is what it really comes down to for most Hamfests. For Hamvention, because they are not, they've canceled it for this year, they're going to do a QSO party, and QSO means contact on the air. So they're going to do that on May 22nd, 2021, and it's 5 a.m. to 5 p.m., so 12 hours Pacific Daylight Time. And if you have any questions, just shout them out at any time. Have any of you been to Hamvention? Cool. So hopefully, next year. So I started to put some slides together, but I think probably the best thing to do is just go over some of the other, take a look at some of the websites. So I'm just going to switch views. Pacificon is outside of Hamvention is probably one of the larger conventions in the Northwest, the West Coast, I should say. And it's held in San Ramon, California, which is just east of San Francisco. It's during the summer, fall timeframe. So this is for 2020, but so this in 2020 was October 16th through 18th. As far as I know, they did cancel it. And I think it's also canceled for this year too. But you can see some of the photos here of the vendor hall in the upper right-hand side, the one of the speakers in the upper left-hand side. They also have some interesting, I don't know what you would call them, but Portland Amateur Radio Club in November had somebody come from the Parachute Mobile Group. And this is a group of ham radio people who plan very meticulously a skydiving event where the skydiver will wear quite a few different ham radios, mainly VHF, UHF radios because they're more local. But what they'll do is they'll go up to where they, their jump altitude, and they'll jump out and start to make calls and QSOs immediately on the air. They're very quick because you can imagine that there's only a few minutes in the air. I think anywhere between 13 and 15 minutes is what he said. And many people will contact them, and because of their altitude, they can make contacts, hundreds of miles away without a repeater. They will send out QSL cards, and those are just little postcards with confirmation of contact to people that request them. And it's just kind of a fun event. They'll usually have a few jumps during the convention itself. And the last place that I've seen them was at this event, Pacificon, in 2019. And has anybody been to Pacificon? They are always looking for speakers. So if you are somebody that is really into one part or knows a lot about one part or one sub hobby of ham radio, they're always looking for people to give talks. So keep that in mind if you get really interested and passionate about one particular or more than one particular area. So here's the Hamvention website. I can skip that. This the closest ham radio ham fair is going to be the one down in Salem, and that happens twice a year. They don't really have a particularly pretty website for this. It's put on by the Salem Amateur Radio Club, and a few months before and it is twice a year, they were supposed to have it in February, and I believe October is the other month that they have it. So it looks like they're scheduled now at least for February 19th, 2022. So we have a little more than a year left. It's mainly, I would say, a flea market. They may have some other activities, but it's really a chance for a lot of the local people, local hams here, to load up their car with all their stuff and sell some stuff, buy some stuff, eat some food, and have a good time.
So Max, is that Rick Real?
Yes, this is Rick Real.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it's just east of Salem, just by a few minutes car drive. And so I've been a few times. It is kind of nice to go see what they have. I've been able to pick up some pretty cool stuff. For example, short pieces of coax that you can use as patch cables, also an antenna switch, some miscellaneous boxes. I did purchase a table for one of the local ham clubs here in Milwaukee, and they were able to sell a lot of their equipment that they were no longer using, and so that they could actually trade it off for some cash. So it's a lot of fun. If you want like a small taste, this would be a great one to go to, just because it happens twice a year. It's very easy to drive there, and it's just one day. I do recommend going early if you really want to get the cool stuff at a fair price. Definitely stand in line for the doors to open, because a lot of the cool stuff goes in the first 20 minutes. It takes about 40 minutes to walk through all the tables, just because there are so many people and so much stuff. Later on in the day, there's still stuff available, not quite as interesting or cool or rare. However, those can usually be had for a pretty good price. So check that out. Their website is w7sra.com if you want to bookmark that. This is another fun one. This is a multi-day Hamvention. It's the Northwest largest convention, and it's at Seaside in at the, what do they call it? The
Seaside Convention Center.
Thank you, Seaside Convention Center. They did some major renovations a couple years ago at CPAC, so it's a pretty nice venue. They have a lot of speakers at this one. So if you want to go to an event where you can spend all day learning a lot about the different sub-hobbies of amateur radio from people that know it really well, this is definitely the place to go. And if they usually have at least 5 or 6 talks going on simultaneously. So what you'll end up doing is you'll have to get a schedule and figure out which ones you want to go to, which ones are interesting. So sometimes, and they try to make it so that, you know, they'll have one for beginning ham radio, like getting started, and they'll have another one for some more technical topic, so that they help balance out the people in the rooms. It's a lot of fun. The seminars themselves usually are only about 50 minutes in length. Some of the more interesting ones that I've been to, hey Dan, and I think Dan will agree, there was somebody there the last time I went in 2019 that was talking about kind of creating your own DXpedition in a suitcase. And DXpeditions are events where a group of people will get together and travel somewhere, usually exotic and remote, set up multiple radios and antennas, operate for anywhere from a couple days to a couple weeks, and then tear everything down and come home. And a lot of these more famous DXpeditions can cost upwards of $1 million or more. And the locations that are that they go to usually are so remote that transportation is one of the major costs for the participants. So, and the reason that they do this is because they want to activate a rare country or rare spot, because a lot of ham radio people will make contacts to a lot of different countries. And there's a lot of different awards that you can get by contacting 100, 200 or more countries. And so some of these countries, because of their remote location, aren't activated much more than once every 20 or so years. So it's a very big event. Anyway, this speaker, oh, there you go, Pitcairn Island.
Yeah. Pitcairn. I think it's 5 miles across. And that's the Christians, the descendants of Fletcher Christian are still there. And you know, that's an mutiny in the Valley. And they're, yep, so I got lucky enough to snag that.
And what year was that, Dan?
1990. Yeah, peak of the sunspot cycle.
Nice. And I think that they've been activated since then, but maybe only once or twice.
Yeah, I think about every 10 to 15 years. Typically, you know, there's a freighter that shows up every 6 months, and that's their only contact with the outside world. So,
nice. Yeah, usually there's a lot of planning that goes that go into these DXpeditions. Sometimes they start 3, maybe even 4 years in advance planning them. So the speaker at CPAC talked about just you and some friends going to a not so remote location, but could be a different country, and just activating and, you know, having your own DXpedition in that country. There are a lot of different places around that aren't activated very often. And if you look around, it's very easy to find some places in the top 20, top 30 most wanted areas to contact. So that for me, and I think for Dan was very interesting, is basically a DXpedition in a suitcase.
Yes. We still have to go back to the Caribbean.
Yes.
You know, there's a lot of islands there in the Caribbean, so we'll go there and set up a station.
Yeah, very nice. So that's CPAC in a nutshell. I really highly recommend it. It is a multi-day event, so if you did want to go there and stay overnight, it's highly recommended that you find either a hotel or find accommodations early. Hotels, especially in Seaside, sell out early, especially the more inexpensive ones.
What kind of cost for the convention?
You know, all conventions that I know of are pretty inexpensive. Even Hamvention, I think, was $25. CPAC generally runs about $10 to $14. They typically will have like an early bird, a regular, and at the door. So your best option would be to get early bird. However, I have purchased early bird, and not been able to attend for one reason or another. So, but at the door is usually, I don't know what, let's see if they.
This is Denny.
Hey, Denny.
Yeah, along the lines of the Hamventions and conventions and meetings like that, don't forget at the very end is the drawing prize. And some of those you can win $1,000 radio station. Sometimes you win $50 stuff, but you can win some good prizes there at all those conventions you mentioned, and that's all I got to say.
Yeah, thanks, Denny. I've never won anything, but your odds are actually really good, a heck of a lot better than the lottery, and you can usually buy, a few dozen tickets for not a lot of money, $20, sometimes $30. You can buy one ticket for $1 usually, if you're the kind of person that just needs their name in the drawing. But yeah, some of the radios are, like Denny said, multi-$1,000 radios.
Let's not forget the rubber chicken banquet.
Oh yes, so CPAC, like a lot of conventions, the larger conventions, they do have a banquet, and it's a very good dinner. It's not inexpensive. I think they can generally be anywhere from $75 to $100 a ticket. But the speaker is usually great. It's one of their keynote speakers. And a lot of the people that go to the banquet meet other people, meet other hams there that they haven't seen, all year. So if you go to these banquets, you'll be meeting a lot of the same people, which can be very great because you may only ever hear them on the air the rest of the year. All right, I should have done this with Hamvention. Where's my Hamvention one? So Hamvention, like I said, usually in May. And there are a couple other smaller conventions that go along with Hamvention because it's so large, people are flying there anyway. So I wanted to point this one out. It's 4 days in May, and it's sponsored by the QR.
QRP,
Dan, do you want to, thanks.
QRP ARCI.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Dan?
Yeah. If you're at all interested in QRP operation is low power. And there's a lot of us that are kind of hooked on trying to make contacts with as little power as possible. It's kind of a challenge, maybe it's kind of like fly fishing or bow hunting or whatever. It's not, not the easiest thing always in the world, but there's quite a few folks who are into that aspect of the hobby. A lot of them, though not all, are into Morse code. There's still a fair proportion of folks single sideband, and they tend to be a little more technical in the sense that they'll build equipment. As opposed to what we call it, and I know it may sound derogatory, but it isn't really, it's appliance operators. I have a bunch of appliances, so don't feel bad. Anyway, this organization has been, gosh, I think it's only the second longest organization in ham radio. So I think it's since like the 1940s or 1950s. They publish a superb magazine. There's an image of it, the QRP Quarterly, with a lot of projects and a lot of information. They do contests, and they do this 4 days in May that is kind of in conjunction with the Dayton Hempfest. And, there's a lot of projects, that you can build, and just, it's just a fun time.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And
sure.
Thanks, Etienne, for posting a lot of the links. One of the things I want to point out is that if you want to get reminded of the updates for any of these events, many of them have like a newsletter or a mailing list. And so I've received actually several emails from CPAC last year and this year, just getting updates. And it'll also kind of remind you of when to buy your tickets when they're inexpensive. So those are really the, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say the 4 days to May is going to be virtual this May.
Yes. Yeah, and Hamvention, yeah.
Yeah, before days to May, a lot of the presenters, you know, and there's a wide variety of folks. They speak some to the history of radio. There was a great speaker last year, the year before, who talked about one of the early Arctic expeditions and the use of hams with Robert Byrd and a number of other people back in the 1920s. Incredibly fascinating. So, you know, you get all kinds of presentations.
So there are other ham conventions and fests that happen that are a little bit hybrid, where a lot of people will drive there or somehow travel there and camp. And so Quartz Fest is one of those. And I haven't actually been to a Quartz Fest, but they usually have one for, I think, for the East Coast and one for the West Coast. And I think it's Arizona or California that is on the West Coast. Cool. The other thing I wanted to point out is because a lot of stuff is going virtual now.
Oh, I was just going to chime in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Quartz Fest is kind of like the ham radio version of Burning Man.
Yes.
You know, you get out in the middle of nowhere and you bring everything that you need, you know, and I don't think that they don't set any big effigies on fire, but you know, they do quite a bit of that stuff. So it's pretty remote.
If you have an RV, it's a really great activity, especially if you're near where the event happens. So one of the big changes that has happened because of COVID, and I think this will continue well into the future, is QSO Today set up a virtual ham expo. And they did this last year, late last year. They had so much attendance and so much good response. They're doing it again this year. The next one is going to be, yes, March 12th of this year. Last year it was free. It was their first event. This year it costs $10 or $12 at the door, which is probably just simply same day registration. And go ahead.
I did attend some of the speakers for the QSO Today.
Yeah.
Never seen such awesome speakers. Everyone's that I watched was very well prepared, had their material was very good. I hope they do that again. I don't know if that's different than some of the others. I know that CPAC, I don't think they do anything to vet or organize speakers. And so it varies some, but the QSO Today, they were very good, and I hope they do it again.
Yeah, thanks, Etienne. And the nice thing about this particular virtual expo is that they allow the people who have registered to view the expo, like all the talks, for up to 30 days on demand afterwards. So one of the issues that I had with CPAC was that there might have been two speakers that I wanted to go to. And sometimes it's not easy to fight the crowds to get from one speaker's room to another speaker's room. So this is really nice because even if you're busy that weekend, there's really no excuse to watch the speakers that you want to. So you simply just log in either during the expo or you can log in up to 30 days afterwards and see not only the speakers, but visit a lot of the virtual booths And you can see one example down there in the kind of the middle left-hand side, Flex Radio. They'll actually have people, live people, to answer questions, and they get to show off their new gear and their new software and things. So it's a pretty fun event if you are available. It's not a very high cost. No travel, no gas, no hotel, no airlines. $10, and you can attend in your casual clothing. So I think it's great. Any questions on this? Any comments?
Max, did you show the GQRP?
I didn't. Thank you.
Yeah. This is another one. GQRP is the English club, QRP club. G being for Great Britain, but if you hear a British call on the air, it's going to have the prefix of G. Like ours are N or W or K or Alpha. In England, it's going to be like, in this case, George Dobbs, G3RJV. And the GQRP club is also another QRP club where they do a lot of building. They publish an excellent magazine called The Sprat. And if you're at all into home brewing, or building your own equipment, or just learning more about it, it's a wonderful magazine. And they do a convention. They did it last September, and I believe they're going to do it again this coming September.
Dan, do you know, is this an online that you can?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And in fact, you could go to YouTube now, and if you typed in GQRP, you could probably see some of the presentations. And it's really fun to kind of get perspectives from different countries. I mean, or as we jokingly say, I talk to some of my English friends, we're separated by a common language. They'll just some of the way they do things, and it's just fun. And in fact, I believe England is where a lot of the soda Summits on the Air activity, I believe the GQRP club had a part in that. Etienne can probably answer more to that than I could. But I would definitely look at the GQRP club.
Cool, thanks, Dan. Anybody else that have been to Hamventions or know about any that I've missed? Those are the major ones that I know about, at least in this area, the Pacific Northwest, and some of the larger national ones.
Well, I do have one to add, but I did want to include that, there's lots of different subsegments in many of the larger ones. Certainly CPAC is that way, Pacificon's that way, but there's a lot of informal gatherings that happen as well. I'm only familiar with informal gatherings for people who do Summits on the Air, but on the Friday before CPAC, we have, until of course last year, about 24 of us would meet for pizza on Friday night before the events would start. And also I understand for Pacificon, if you show up for lunch, Elliot K60 will buy your lunch to join them for Friedrichshafen, which is in Germany, is that right? There's a gathering of soda enthusiasts. So there are lots of informal things on the side, as well as the main topics. The other one that I've not attended that I did want to add, and I'll put it in the chat here as well, is I know people who attend SalmonCon in Washington. It's a QRP gathering over a weekend. It's around camping. So they actually, again, might do some soda summits as well, but it's a gathering for QRP around camping. I don't think there's a building they go to. I don't know what it's really like there, but I put that one up in the chat as well. A number of my friends have attended that. I think it's someplace in the Cascades east of Seattle.
Thank you very much, Etienne. Yeah, I forgot about that. Was a really fun meetup that we had at Pacificon, CPAC, where we all met at a pizza restaurant, had pizza, talked QRP, And then the event was going out onto the beach, which was literally right there, and setting up the radio and making some QRP contacts. And that not just with people locally. These, QRP on HF radio, you can talk easily to people across this nation and into Canada and other places, mostly using CW just because it travels a little bit better, well, a lot better than phone does. But that was a lot of fun, just figuring out ways to keep the sand out of your radio.
Did you talk about the antenna build?
I didn't. Do you want to tell them about that?
Go ahead and start it. I'll get the antenna out so we can show people.
Okay. And Dan is talking about an event that we happened at Pacificon in 2019. A lot of the conventions, they will have some sort of a building activity. And so that year we built an HF antenna. It was a small portable HF antenna designed by somebody that runs a website that sells a lot of the kits that are like portable and small. And so we built the antenna one night, and then the next night, everybody kind of set up either back at their hotel or at the convention center, or they would go out to a local park, and they just started making contacts using the antenna they built the night before. So it was a fun event. I think it cost $30, which was almost break even for the people who supplied all the parts. The whole build took about an hour and a half if you really didn't know what you were doing, and maybe 45 minutes if you had some soldering experience. There are a lot of people there to help other people with following directions and getting things right. So it was a lot of fun. And then you walk away with something that you can actually use.
Oh. Yeah.
Can I tell a slightly off-topic story but related?
Yeah.
My first Hempfest was in 1969 in Bend, and it was quite a memorable experience. It was at the fairgrounds in Bend, and that night Steve Miller Band was playing at the fairgrounds in Bend, and the light show was on an overhead projector with 3 little bowls of colored oil that were swirled around to make a little bit of a psychedelic light show behind the band. So on that Hempfest, I had a 60 Pontiac. So it was the first time I'd ever driven my car over 100 miles an hour, first time I'd been to a Hempfest, and the first time I'd been to a rock concert.
Oh, that's great. Do you happen to remember what the name of the Hempfest was, or?
I don't know exactly what the name was. I had just assumed, I mean, I was only 16 years old. I just assumed it was like the Bend people in the Central Oregon kind of thing. But
oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Thanks, Jay.
That's a great story, Jay. That explains a lot about you.
Well, it covers a lot of my bases, doesn't it?
yeah, exactly. Here's the antenna. Can you see that?
Yeah. And so it's basically just made out of a couple pieces of PVC,
right,
and some magnet wire that wasn't too easy to wind, but once we figured out how to do it, we got it all done.
Yeah, and you screw on your telescopic elements like so. I don't know if you can see that. It might be a little hard to see. And it was a pretty effective HF antenna, given what it is, you know, as a compromise. And of course, it breaks down into a very small package. And I think, didn't we go out the next day and I made some contacts?
We did. We stopped at one of the, by the San Francisco airport.
Yeah, like a bird sanctuary or something. Yeah. So it just sort of pops into a little bag here, which is, you know, pretty compact. So here it is. There's your HF antenna.
Yeah, and it works really well.
Yeah,
I've used it a couple of times, and it's modeled somewhat, I should say, modeled after a commercial product that is sold for, I believe, over $100 now.
right.
So it was pretty cool just to be able to build something $30 with a bunch of friends, and then actually get to try it out.
Yeah, it was such a fun event because there was probably 35 or 40 people there that had all paid their, $20 or $30, and he had a bank of soldering irons. And then the main guy his name is Doug Hendricks, and he's kind of one of the fathers of QRP in this region. And he put it all together, and he was giving instructions, and then you'd do your part, then you'd go to the soldering station, and then you'd come up and he'd drill some more holes for you, and then you'd wind it and get it all put together. And then they had a couple guys with antenna analyzers, and they would test it and trim it. So I made just for a fun evening, fun project, and yeah, it was hotels on the air. Hotel.
That's right. An
So
official
the idea
event.
was, you go back to your hotel room, hook it up to your radio, and see how many other hotel rooms you can work.
That's great. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
And, besides these, generic with topics that really would suit any ham, like QSO Today, Pacificon, or CPAC, there are also those that focus on a particular topic. One that I know of, I've attended, is the Pacific Northwest VHF Society. And they would meet in different places around the region. They rotate between Seaside and Bend in Oregon, and someplace, Issaquah, for example, and then Moses Lake. They've not met in Idaho, but they have a similar program, much more condensed. It's usually just a day's worth. And the the flea market is going out to the back of people's pickup trucks after the meeting's over. So I posted their site. I'm not sure when they'll have their next event. They did not have one, of course, like many people in 2020, not even virtual. But so there's a specific kind of, club or organization, a DX club. They often have conventions annually or maybe every other year that have a focused interest that might be of value, of interest to some of the people here.
Yeah. Willamette Valley DX Club, I think, hosts some of those. Yeah, so for those who are into, working as many countries as possible, that's another event.
Yeah, I'll post this in the chat also, but here's a page that has a lot of the Pacific Northwest Hempfares and events. So if you wanted to kind of find out what normally is coming up, the good thing is that most of these ham conventions, they happen at the same time every year, often even the same weekend year to year. Unfortunately, most of these looks like they've been canceled, but keep an eye out for when they come up again. Cool. All right, so I think we'll just turn it over to the question and answer portion. Does anybody have any questions, comments about either Hempfest, Hempfares, Expos, or anything else in general on ham radio?
Quick question. I couldn't make your meeting Monday night, but did you videotape that? Is that going to be posted on your website? So I would like to see about the antenna.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, we did record it, and let me just check just to make sure. I thought I posted it, but let me find out. We are also, for those of you who may not have been able to attend, I'm going to just throw up what we put, what the meeting was about. It was building an easy 2-meter antenna that's pretty portable, pretty easy to build. It's a spirally loaded copper tape and PVC dipole. And it's really just a piece of about 3 foot 1¼ inch PVC with copper foil that's wrapped on the top and the bottom. In the middle there, you see that there's kind of like a missing piece with a hole in it, and that's the center of the antenna. So the bottom side is connected to the shield of the coax, and the top side, the top spiral, is connected to the center conductor of the coax. So John Fortune, W6NBC, he wrote this article. This is in QST, the October 2020 edition. It's only 3 pages long. The directions are somewhat light. It's enough to kind of get you started in building it. However, it's a great antenna, and I think he has some other things that are coming up, some HF antennas based on the same concept.
Yeah, and if you check out the videos and the presentation that we put together, I think that'll help clear up a lot of the mystery. And performance-wise, I was shocked at how good this antenna works. Just last night, I had it on the air, and I don't know, Max, if you've got the picture handy, maybe you can throw that up.
Yeah.
It's a very jury-rigged kind of installation. I just had a little steel fence post to you just sort of push in the ground with your feet, and about 5 feet long. So I pushed it into the dirt, duct taped the antenna, there you go, up next to the side of the house. And using simplex, not just a repeater. I was heard from Oregon City all the way up to North Portland on 5 watts. So it'll radically improve your ability to communicate. Even if you have to have it indoors or like on a balcony, if you're in an apartment or something of that nature. And it's so lightweight, you could easily, just pick it up and move it. So.
And initially, when I was thinking about this as a sort of a project for the club, something easy to build and something very useful, I was thinking, well, after people build it, they'll probably want to attach it, somewhere high up on their house using brackets. And of course, people living in apartments or rentals, that's not necessarily always going to work out. So I was glad when Dan actually was able to basically put this antenna up outside on, just using an old fence post in 5 minutes with some duct tape. That's awesome, because I can tell you that using your handheld radio indoors is not going to get you very far. It may get you into a local repeater, but it also may not. I have a clear view of Mount Hood. However, I have trouble hitting the repeater or talking through the repeater if I am indoors. So I at least have to go outdoors, and on days like today, that's not very fun. So if you're at all interested, we are offering kits, basically all the parts for building this antenna, and we'll figure out a good way to get it to you. Instead of buying, large pieces of PVC and cutting them, we'll supply all of the things that you would need to build it. The directions are going to be on the park page in video format. We spent the entire meeting going over the build of this, but you can also, it's in QST, the October edition of last year. Now, one of the interesting things is on this antenna, you can see that it doesn't look like there is any copper foil tape, but what Dan has done is he's put another piece of 2-inch PVC on top of the antenna or over the antenna, and that protects it from the rain and the other elements. So a pretty inexpensive and pretty clever way to waterproof the antenna. Yeah. If you are interested in getting a kit, just put your name and your email in the chat, and I'll add you to the list. We're ordering parts right now. So once we get it all kitted up together in about a week and a half from now, we will start to distribute them. Oh, the important thing, right? Kit price, we're not making a big profit off of this. So it's actually $20 for one kit, and that'll get you enough supplies the PVC, the cap, the connectors, the most expensive part, which is the coax. It is a quality RG8X coax, and of course the copper foil tape.
Yeah, I think what did we figure it took us maybe an hour and a half.
Yeah,
once we figured out.
Most of it was reading directions.
Right.
Yep.
Once we sort of sorted through that, goes together pretty quickly. Yeah. And just for, to use a big 10-cent word for elucidation, this is a vertical dipole as opposed to a quarter wave vertical. So, and all that means is typically like on your handheld, or if you have a mag mount on your car, you would have a quarter wave or some approximation thereof as the radiator. And the other portion of that antenna would be either grounding, like in a handheld through the case and through your body, or in a car, it would ground to the car body. So this would technically be a half wave because it has both the sections upper and lower. So what's nice about that is it doesn't require, another type of ground. It's sort of a standalone antenna.
Yeah, and the author of this particular antenna compares it to, he's done some tests on it, and he compares it to a copper J-pole. And a copper J-pole is a pretty common antenna that many people build because the parts are so inexpensive and readily available. And I will put up an image of what a copper J-pole looks like. And there's nothing wrong with copper J-pole. For 2 meters, they do tend to be a little bit larger, about 5 feet. And it's really simply a large and a small piece of copper water pipe that you can solder together. And you can see that the shield is attached to the large piece of copper pipe, and then the center conductor to the small copper pipe. So this is a typical antenna that you could put together and mount on your roof or on your fence or whatnot, and get pretty good reception and the ability to transmit simplex and into repeaters. However, the antenna, basically what we call the barber pole antenna that the club built, or that was our last meeting, compares very favorably to the copper J-pole, about a quarter dB down from a copper J-pole. So you're not sacrificing hardly any performance for something that's a lot smaller and I think a little bit easier to build.
Hey Max, I have a question about that copper tubing J-pole.
Oh yeah.
How do you tune something like that? Because I remember when you were mentioning the barber pole, or the barber, what do you call it? The barber.
Yeah, I just call it the barber pole antenna.
Barber pole antenna.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like when you were doing that, you were tuning it by like cutting off a thin strip of the copper and then using your tuning tool and then going back and readjusting it. Are you doing the same thing with the big copper J-pole like that?
That's right. Yep. So you're essentially just cutting off or somehow magically adding back sections of tubing.
Some of the J-poles, will actually are constructed in a way that they have sliding elements. Some of them are also made out of wire. I have a wire J-pole that is a little easier to trim. So there's a variety of options, but we kind of like the barber pole because all you got to do is take like a little box knife or sharp knife and trim off a section, until it becomes resonant, or add it back on. And, it was amazing how, how quickly it tuned up and was easy to deal with.
Here's my next question.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. My next question is, instead of like like physically cutting an end of the copper pipe off, can you actually tune that kind of antenna that you have up on the screen? Can you tune that by sliding the pieces in and out of each other like a trombone almost, to tune it that way until it becomes resonant? Or do you have to actually physically like take off the tip?
Yeah, no, the one that I put up there, for the most part, those they tune them first before they do any major soldering and kind of put it up. I'm gonna put up on the screen, if I can find my. Here we go. So this is the same J-pole concept. This is made using whip antennas. So for something that's a little bit more portable that you're not going to put on your roof, they're telescopic antennas that you can, pull up and down. And so you'll start with these measurements, and then you can push them up and down just slightly to get the antenna tuned correctly. The issue with this is it's more of a portable antenna, not something you necessarily want to be left out in the rain, versus like a copper J-pole that you want to tune by either cutting it off or having some way to adjust the copper pipe.
And actually that's, a good question, because a lot of times the antennas, if they're built and already delivered to you as tuned, that's okay, except everybody's situation is different. You put it up in your, yard or house or apartment. There may be other items that interact with the antenna that will affect the tuning and the resonance. So, it could be a perfect one-to-one, all by itself out in the middle of a field, and you put it up and, you've got a drain pipe nearby, or you've got something else, and you have to compensate and retune. So it's nice to be able to have that flexibility of being able to tune an antenna once you get it into your situation, because there's many factors, the length of the coax, the height above ground, all those things can impact, the tuning, which impacts the efficiency.
Yeah, so Etienne, he put into chat one of the popular J-pole antennas, and this is a dual band. And this is something that if you buy comes pre-tuned. So they've already tested it. And for the most part, you can just put it up and forget about it, as long as you don't have some strange situation where you may have some metal or something that is interfering with it. The nice thing about the barber pole antenna, though, is that as you're making it, if you do happen to cut off too much copper foil tape, just take a little extra piece of it, overlap it by about an inch, and then just, stick it on and then continue to tune. So I actually did that when I was building the antenna. I cut about 3 inches too much off, so I just put some on and then continued to tune it.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, I guess I'm thinking, you say tuning, and I grew up playing like a violin. I don't play it any longer, but I'm trying to tune an antenna. But yeah, it's interesting because it's a lot of the same concept of resonance and sort of getting. You can buy a certain guitar string, one for each, string up or down, and the way that you play it and the tension that you have on it produces a different sound. So that's how I'm thinking of it, anyways. And it's interesting to learn more about it, anyways. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the good question. Oh, Dan, you're muted.
No, I was going to say it's a perfect example. I was a professional musician, so I dealt with that issue all the time, and it's very similar. There was a couple of questions in the chat. Maybe I'll address.
Yeah, that'd be great.
First one was about QSLing, the QSL cards to confirm a contact. And I think ATN put some stuff in there. These days, a lot of people are doing electronic QSLs because they're instantaneous, they're a lot cheaper. And I still really like the old paper. There you go. The old paper ones. They're just a lot of fun to put up. I mean, you could print them off without any problem, and stick them up. But it's just fun to have that kind of that pasteboard card. I'm sitting here in my shack looking at all these, cool cards that came from all over the world and thinking, wow, it really kind of brings back a memory. But yeah, electronic QSL and confirmation is, fun. In fact, there's a whole group of people that do nothing but collect old QSL cards from the 20s and 30s. And there was a lot of great cartoon artists. And so there's, a whole thing on QSL art, and that's
about all these different things we're gonna have to do, putting the separate unit outside, all the conduit, all the extra wiring was crazy. Yeah, it is involved in it. It's not.
I missed that. Was that a comment?
No, I think that was somebody listening to a radio.
Oh, okay. The other comment was about the fox hunt. The fox hunt I did happen on Tuesday evening. And it does happen every Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesdays is 40 meters. Thursday is 80 meters. And I was out at Max's place and had a pretty good session. We had a lot of fun. In fact, there were so many signals from all over the country in Canada that it was almost overwhelming, and pretty intense and pretty fun.
Hey, Dan, I have a question on the QSL cards. What's
Sure.
the etiquette for getting someone's address? For instance, when I register with the FCC, knowing that my address would be on the internet with my name, et cetera, I went down, I just got a PO box.
Sure.
But should I say like, hey, can I send you a card, or should I just send one a card? And when it shows up in the mail, should they not be alarmed? I mean, in this day and age, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think it's totally fine to just send cards. I get a lot of them unsolicited, but it's totally normal, and nobody, now that, sometimes people will feel obligated to return a card and they may not have cards printed, so you could just indicate on there, no need for a return, or if you do want a card, what I would do, what I have done, if I wanted somebody to reply with a card, is I'd include an envelope with some postage or something like that to encourage them to reply.
Yeah, most QSL cards in this particular example, on the lower right-hand side, there's QSL and then there's PSC and TNX. So if you wanted to get a card back from somebody you made a contact with, a good way would be to send them one of your cards and then just check mark where it says PSE, which means QSL please. Or if somebody has sent you a card and you want to send one back to them, then you would just mark QSL TNX, which means thank you for sending me a QSL card.
Thanks. Yeah, I've been looking. I knew about QSL cards, and I just think that's neat. So I kind of want to start doing that myself. Thanks.
Yeah. And as far as getting people's addresses, when you get an amateur radio license, you do have to have a mailing address. Doesn't have to be your house. This is not my house. This is actually a post office box that I have. And you can look up people's location online in several places, the FCC website, or this is another good one, QRZ.com. And for QRZ, they make you log in, but it's a free account, and you can look up people's details. So I don't have a biography, and hopefully I'm still logged in, yes, from earlier today. And in my details, it will give my coordinates, my grid square, my license class, and when it was effective, when it expires, things like that. They even have a little place where you can view the FCC record on the official FCC site.
Matter of fact, just go out and Google, just go type in somebody's call sign in your search bar, and you'll get either the FCC on top or QRZ or any one of 2 or 3 others that'll pop up just by typing in the call sign.
Yeah, that's a good point, Kirk. Cool. Any other questions ham radio related?
Max, I do have a question. I'm assuming most of the ham operators are pretty honest as far as if they're trying to sell used equipment, will generally tell, or are there some charlatans out there that try to get good money for bad equipment? Or if you have, is generally pretty much most people pretty honest when you're buying out of the trunk of the car?
That is actually a great question. There are some tips and tricks on working with ham radio operators, because there's a lot of warnings also. People will actually post warnings about particular ham radio people that may have scammed other ham radio people. I would say in general, it is extremely rare for ham radio people to be charlatans during a transaction, especially if it's in person. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I've been scammed by many more non-ham radio people than I have ham radio people. And that's actually a great question, because one of the things that reminds me that I wanted to share with everybody is you don't necessarily have to go to a Hamfest to get a good deal on something. There's a lot of places that you can go to on the internet. eham.net is one of them, where they have a classifieds area. So if you have something that you want to sell, or if you want to get a good deal on a piece of equipment, their classified section is a great place to go take a look. You can also, go here and take a look and find out what value people are posting similar equipment if you wanted to sell it yourself. So the great thing about this is that this is essentially ham selling to hams. So it's, for the most part, pretty safe. I do think that they even have a section on like warning other people of people using their call sign, sort of like identity theft. The other places that you probably want to be a little bit more careful about is places like eBay, Amazon, generally non-ham related sites where sometimes ham people get on and will sell stuff successfully, but sometimes non-hams will get on and try to sell something that may not be working, but they'll try to sell it as working. Just use common sense. Things like don't send people money through PayPal using friends and family, because you don't get any protections that way. Don't send a cashier's check through the mail. So sometimes if a deal looks too good to be true, it might be. But I have purchased and sold quite a few things through the mail very successfully and worry-free.
If you're at a Hamfest, you can see the person face to face, but I always generally assume, especially if it's an older unit, that, guys will go, a very typical exchange is, well, it worked the last time I plugged it in. And when would that have been? And it's not that they're being fraudulent or anything, but it may well have worked. But if they haven't turned it on in a while, it could be a little dicey. A lot of the better Hamfests have like a test table where, if the seller doesn't want to allow that, in other words, the test table is, oh, I'm interested in your radio. Let's take it over to this table, which is run by the Hamfest, where they have power outlets, dummy loads, and that kind of thing, where you can actually hook up the radio, turn it on. Oh yeah, it's a $5 fee. I think Etienne was posting, for the test table. And that's, if it's going to be kind of a major purchase, I think that's $5 well spent.
Go ahead, Dan.
Oh, Yeah, so I think that's money well spent. If it's an older item, you know, I collect a lot of the really old radios. I just assume that they're probably not working, you know, and that's half the fun is restoring, you know, a radio, you know. And so, you know, some of these cool ones from the 40s and 50s and 60s, you know, you're probably going to have to put some work in on them. So, you know, and they go, oh, yeah, I think it's just a vacuum tube. Well, yeah, usually vacuum tubes are the last thing to go, by the way. But, you know, that's all part of the fun of, you know, bargain hunting. You know, it's just kind of like, you know, you're going to buy a used car from a guy at a swap meet, kind of the same.
Thank you.
Sure.
One thing I do want to mention is that over the years, this is not new, but Amazon.com is not necessarily the best place to buy ham radio gear, especially new stuff. I think that there's quite a few people that will buy a radio for $150, but they'll post it on Amazon and sometimes eBay for $250. And it's not like they're scamming people. I think, you know, part of it might be that some people just, Amazon is a very convenient place to shop. They might have, you know, prime shipping, so you can order it today and get it in 2 days. But you check other sources before you buy stuff on Amazon, just to check pricing. Cool. I think we have time for one more question. Yeah, ATN posted that there's currently on Craigslist is a $120 radio for $150. Is it new at least?
I didn't follow that.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead, Andrew.
And this is more of just an open conversation. I'm always looking for recommendations, but I plan on going through and watching the older beginning ham series videos on YouTube. But I was wondering if there are any other, just off the top of your heads, great YouTube channels that are good for getting into the hobby, that are either, you know, fun projects or just like beginner guides on certain builds or common things that might have, you know, a lot of followers or production value that you guys would recommend?
Is this for building equipment?
It could be for anything new like that, building or usage.
Right.
Just really introductory stuff would be very helpful since YouTube's such a good resource. Yeah,
well, the ARRL videos, you know, are excellent, and if you want to check out a couple of podcasts, one of my favorite podcasts is called Ham Radio Workbench. And, you know, they'll cover quite a range of topics. And I mean, you could just kind of scroll through the listings and kind of go, oh, that sounds interesting. And the guys are knowledgeable and fun. And I always learn a lot by listening to that one. And here it looks like here's some other ones that people have posted too.
Yeah, I would second that. The Ham Radio Workbench. It does tend to be a longer podcast, so sometimes up to 3 hours or more. But when I'm driving around town or if I have a long drive somewhere, it's actually quite pleasant to listen to, and I end up learning quite a bit. They usually have at least one guest speaker on with two other hosts that talk about a lot of things. One of the YouTube videos that I wanted to mention because he's been so active is Dave Kassler. And so he has done a lot of videos on not only like taking your test and getting ready to take the test, but also building things, reviews, and other information like bonding and grounding your ham radio. They're typically shorter videos, anywhere from 5 to 15 or so minutes in length. And they're just really well thought out and put together. So if you wanted to get a little bit more information about something like what is SWR or how do I tune an antenna, take a look at Dave Kassler, and I think his call sign KE0OG. And then here's the ham radio workbench.
Yeah.
And then also ARRL has some podcasts that are great. Unfortunately, I think they've retired a couple of them that were great in the past, and it's just people were getting a little bit older, and so they didn't. But they still have. Go ahead, Dan.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, I think you can still get the ones called The Doctors.
Yes.
And that's an excellent podcast, and they'll focus on different topics. And that one, you know, what you can kind of cycle through and go, oh, I want to learn about this antenna or this situation. And there's some excellent information available there. So there's a lot of good resources. Yeah.
Thank you. That was very helpful, guys.
Yeah.
Good.
If you just want to kind of cruise YouTube, search on amateur radio or ham radio and start going down through. And when I first started, I'd find a site. The first thing I would do is look at how many subscribers they have. Mm-hmm. If they got 10, yeah. If they've got 5,000 or 10,000, might be something there. So
yeah, I have more time to watch YouTube these days than I'd like, but I figure I might as well be using it well.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I've watched a lot of Dave Kassler stuff. There's, I think Stevie or somebody mentioned Ham Radio 2.0. There's Ham Radio Crash Course. There's probably 15 or 20 regular and knowledgeable YouTubers out there that are doing videos on a regular basis. And they're trying to get as many others into the process, just relaying their own personal experiences and stuff. So, you know, just go out and snoop around.
One of my favorites of a little more technical nature, it's not exactly ham radio, but very close and very, very well done for a lot of basic electronic theory and building and repairing, is Mr. Carlson's Lab. And that is an outstanding series. You know, and he goes into in depth on a lot of these projects. And it's very well done. So that you might get a kick out of watching that one. Mr. Carlson's Lab.
Add it to the list. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, YouTube is great. I wish that there was more time for me to watch even more YouTube. Cool. Well, we're coming up to the end of the time this week. I did want to mention that next week is going to be Morse code and the different modes of ham radio: Morse code, voice or phone, and digital. I think Dan's going to help me on next week's topic. We also have programming your radio, which is going to be, I think, very helpful for a lot of you who have either just purchased a Baofeng radio or even an easier to program radio like the FT60R. It's just a lot easier to program your radio using your computer than it is to directly punch in all the numbers on the front keypad. So don't make sure you don't miss that. That's coming up in 2 weeks. We're going to talk about ARRL membership and all the benefits that come with membership. It's not too expensive. They have several magazines, which now as members, we get access to all 4 of their magazines for one membership. And I believe membership is now $49 a year. Back, I think in about 2000, 2001, I purchased their lifetime membership. And so I think I'll be breaking even here pretty soon. Then we're going to talk about amateur radio band plans, and then we'll have a session on battery backup coming up.